WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.
Hello and welcome to this very special series brought to you by WazirX and CNBC TV18, Crypto, the Digital Assets of the Future. We have Preethi Kasireddy with us in the show. Preethi, you were discussing on how this is so difficult right now to whether call the cryptocurrencies as a currency or as an asset class, and both of them really are quite different in their leagues. But I also want to talk about on how India has made such big investments when it comes to cryptocurrencies, whether it is by the way of exchanges, or is it softwares, personnel, or whether it is also about startups. That's a huge number that we've seen mushrooming in this space as well. How do you look at the kind of interest that we've seen come in on the retail level as well as on an HNI level into this space?
So I am genuinely surprised by how much crypto has really taken over the minds of entrepreneurs in India. I remember coming to India in 2016, and I was kind of disappointed at the crypto scene because it just felt like a lot of hype and not much innovation happening. And then I came back again in 2020, and it was just like night and day. It felt like somehow all of the knowledge that was being generated in Silicon Valley about crypto got transplanted to India. And now Indians were on the same level playing field as the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. So I think that's a huge positive. And I think all of the entrepreneurial interest that's coming in the space is incredibly good, and it should be encouraged. And unfortunately, what I see happening, though, is that entrepreneurs, because of the regulatory gray area right now, where there's so much uncertainty, entrepreneurs are scared to innovate in India. And so they're either, going to the US and trying to build companies, or, moving to Singapore or something else. So I think that's not good. But I do think the positive is there is a lot of interest. And the retail interest, to be totally honest, I haven't paid much attention to the retail interest in India. I don't know how that's progressing. My main connection point to India is the entrepreneurs, and I'm genuinely surprised by what's happening there.
Well, yes. The other conversation that you hear, especially from the lawmakers, is about blockchain and cryptocurrency being treated as two separate things or entities. How do you read into that?
The real point of blockchain is to remove intermediaries and remove trust, right? And so the only way to do that is that you need some kind of mechanism to coordinate the different stakeholders in the system. And that is where the currency comes in, because you can use the currency to basically coordinate the incentives of the stakeholders in the system so that they can all act on the well-being on behalf of the system and do the right thing. When you take away that currency, then you basically add back trust and all the things that we're trying to sort of eliminate. And so it's kind of just like this broken wannabe crypto system at that point. I would say, there's some places where I can see a blockchain being useful. I haven't spoken to people, but I know, for example, banking, maybe they can use a shared ledger to create some kind of efficiencies there amongst different banks. So there's things like that I think could exist, but that it's a very limited use case. I think if you just remove the currency from crypto, you're eliminating a lot of potential use cases that haven't even been thought of today. Because the reality is we have these primitives. We have this primitive called cryptocurrency and blockchain. And what we need both of them, because we need entrepreneurs to go out there and innovate and figure out what can they do? What kind of problems can they solve using these primitives? And if you just take out the currency part of it, it just leads to a very limited use case.
Preethi, there was this a long debate that went on for some time, is that perhaps only 2 to 4% of people hold 80% of Bitcoin. So it's not so widely spread. Do you see that situation get better with more and more names now getting associated with this?
I think I agree that a lot of the Bitcoin holders are whales and so forth. I think it'll get slightly better. I don't think we can expect Bitcoin to be fully decentralized or something like that. It's just not going to happen because it's kind of too late for that, I would say. I think but the good thing is other currencies can learn from it, right? They can figure out how to better distribute currency from the day one so that it doesn't end up being so concentrated in a few hands. And I think a lot of cryptocurrency projects are doing that, and they're trying to find innovative ways to distribute their token over the course of time. But for Bitcoin, I think we can get a little bit better than where we are today, but I don't think we're going to get to the point where it's like truly like, democratically distributed or something.
Preethi, if you were to advise the governments, Indian governments, for example, what would you advise them? I mean, as you said, you were here in 2020, and you've seen an explosion here when it comes to the interest that there has been in blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I would say, I think like the government, I can see where they're coming from, right? And I think like the government, I think some people give them a lot of slack, and they're like, they almost hate the government, but I think they need to do what's right for the citizens. And if they don't understand it, I can see why they're like, well, we don't get it yet, so let's just like not allow it because we don't know what bad things can happen with it. So I understand where they're coming from, but I think if they want to take if they want to make the best move possible, I think the right thing to do is to allow entrepreneurs to build companies. Maybe they have some kind of even like application system where each company gets evaluated for what they're building, and they're kind of like somehow licensed almost to build, right? That would allow entrepreneurs to experiment, but it would also give the government some, I guess, comfort or security in knowing that they've approved some of these ideas and they're allowing this experimentation to happen. And so finding some kind of in-between solution like that, where they're just very entrepreneur friendly, is going to be absolutely important. And I think they should really do that rather than the outright ban.
Oh, well, yes, the right balance and an in-between, as you said, would be an amazing thing to happen here. Preethi, also, you write about a lot of hot topics when it comes to this space. You're almost a genius when it comes to this space because you've been following it, working in it for years now. What would you say are the challenges right now that the space faces?
I would say the challenges are, one is, I think, better education for retail. And I know that like there's so much education out there now. There's so much blog posts and content and stuff, but I still feel like the education can use a lot of improvement. And I don't know what that is. And like, I think like there's, companies like Binance and Coinbase, they're trying to do education, right, with different platforms like Coinbase Earn or Binance. Binance, they have like some kind of educational platform, but I still don't feel like that's enough. I think like we really need better education, because if like the government still doesn't get it, for example, there's something that we're not doing right as an industry to teach people about like why this is important and why this is a good thing. And so I think education is one. And then two, I think like, I just think we need more entrepreneurs, just like anything else. And we definitely see a lot of entrepreneurs coming in the space, but like the more, the better, right? Because the more people we have innovating in the space, the more ideas we have to try out. And then some of them, like maybe 1% of them will work. And that's what will sort of define the industry. So we need more and more entrepreneurs to be coming into the industry and experimenting, rather than just coming into it to make money. Those are very, very different things. And I think, I don't think we need any more speculators in the industry. We already have too many speculators. What we really need is like builders to come in and experiment and be funded to experiment.
Well, yes. And there are a lot of challenges here, Preethi, because it has been called a bubble, very volatile. What is it backed by? And then, of course, various concerns because of the anonymity of it all. But what are the kind of opportunities that you see coming from this space? It has been called the internet of the future, though, of course, the acceptance is slightly difficult to take. But how do you see the next 5 or 10 years when it comes to this space?
Crypto is like, it's like one of those things. It's like, if 5 years ago, there was definitely a risk that the whole space could just die. But I think we're a little too far in right now, to the point where I think like this is the future. The pendulum is swinging from a very centralized world to being somewhat more decentralized, and crypto just gives us the tools to build that decentralized world. I'm not the believer that like we're gonna end up in this like ultimate like everything is decentralized world, because I think at the end of the day we're all human and we still like some level of trust and some layers of different stacks. So I don't think every layer of the world is going to be trustless, but I think some of them, a percentage of them will be, and crypto will be that force that allows us to do that. And so in the next 5 to 10 years, like I think like it's even the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to be continuing to just innovate. Like I view crypto as more like a 50 to 100 year type of game that we're playing. And so, we're so early in that. We're only like a little over 10 years into that journey. So in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to only be 20 years into that journey. So we'll be chugging along, but I would just, I don't expect any like all of a sudden in 10 years, we're going to end up in a completely different world. I think it'll be piecemeal. Different, each industry by industry will be disrupted by crypto in one way or another, some more than others.
All right, Preethi, we'll let you go at that. Thank you so much for joining us. And your words are well taken, that better education, more entrepreneurs, and of course, builders is what the markets are looking at, especially for this space. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for talking to CNBC TV 18 today.
WazirX and CNBC TV 18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable. WazirX and CNBC TV 18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.
Hello and welcome to this very special series brought to you by WazirX and CNBC TV 18, Crypto, the Digital Assets of the Future. Joining us today is a very special guest, Preethi Kasireddy. She is an entrepreneur and a writer on crypto. Preethi, hi, good to have you. And I'm looking forward to a very interesting conversation with you because you've been in the field for a very long time. What is your sense, first of all, on where the world stands when it comes to cryptocurrencies, the acceptance, the debates ongoing?
Sure. I've been in the space since probably 2015, since my time, since I was a software engineer at Coinbase. I think I'm genuinely surprised by how much crypto has evolved in the last year after 2020. I don't think any of us in crypto expected 2020 to happen and what it would do to change how the world perceives crypto. And I think 2020, as awful as it was for a lot of people in terms of job losses and just everything that happened last year, for crypto, it was obviously a very, very positive thing because of what 2020 did. Was it revealed to the broader world what a lot of us in crypto already knew about failing institutions, lack of trust in these institutions. A lot of that started to surface to the normal people because they started to see how poorly these institutions were functioning in a pandemic. So I thought it was a great, I thought the last couple of years especially were a great ride in crypto. But I'm happy to answer any specific questions as we go on in this conversation.
Preethi, even as the market cap for cryptocurrencies now stands for more than 1 trillion, but there are various issues still remaining to be ironed out, sorted. Various governments are still taking a call. They are in process of making bills, including India as well. How do you look at the acceptance, especially when a lot of Wall Street banks and corporates are now talking about accepting Bitcoin, investing in cryptocurrencies?
I think if you asked me this 5 years ago, whether I would guess that companies like Tesla would be holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, I would say absolutely not. So I think we are almost like underestimating how much progress we've made in crypto. Yes, it hasn't been adopted yet. And sure, it's not being used for solving some of the problems in the third world countries that a lot of crypto people purport to claim that crypto does solve. We're not there yet. We haven't figured out the exact use cases and how to get this thing in the hands of users who really need it. But the first step is actually getting the idea out there. We need to get people in love with this idea of decentralization, of not having to trust a single entity, but allowing a bunch of stakeholders to coordinate. So in that sense, I think we have made a lot of progress.
How do you look at the various governments approaching cryptocurrency? I mean, clearly this just does threaten them on where they stand.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think every government in every country is sort of following a different approach. The US, which I'm most familiar with since I live here, has sort of been like indecisive is the best word to describe it. Like they're not saying we're going to ban crypto, but they're not saying like, oh yeah, let's go and innovate on crypto either. So it's quite indecisive. And I think the bad thing about that is it kind of puts entrepreneurs in limbo because they don't know whether they can go out and do these things or whether if they do these things they'll go to jail, right? So that's US approach. But India, on the other hand, has taken a very different approach where they keep threatening to ban it, or at least they were. And I think it reflects like India's own culture, government culture of rejecting things that they don't understand. But I think what we're seeing now is a lot of positive education happening around crypto. And I hope that helps the government get educated about it so that rather than outright banning it, they'll allow it. Besides US and India, I think there's other countries that are much smaller that are much more open-minded about crypto. And I think that's exciting, right? For example, countries like Singapore and Estonia, they've always been crypto friendly. And you can argue that they can do that because they're just so much smaller and so much more nimble, and they're able to like navigate these things much faster. And they don't have like entrenched government policies already that they need to break before they can allow something like this to come in. So I think every country around the world is doing something a little bit different, depending on, their existing structure and how forward thinking they are. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I hope that, countries that are more forward looking and more accepting of crypto will, I hope like that will set the bar for other countries who are sort of scared or being a little bit more conservative, because what will happen is entrepreneurs will go to these other countries that are more open-minded about crypto, and that will cause a talent drain, right? And no country wants a talent drain. So I'm hoping that like the more open-minded countries encourage some of the more conservative countries to also be a little bit more open-minded.
Well, that's exactly what happened last time, Preethi, when that happened in India, when the Reserve Bank of India suspended banks from facilitating anything to do with cryptocurrencies. A lot of exchanges shut down or moved out into other countries. Would you say that a lot of central banks or countries are stalling it because, one, they don't understand it, two, they don't know whether they can actually ban it or control it or let it be? So how do you think, you talked about on how from 2015 to 2020 has been a big change that we've seen in this space. How do you see the next 5 years, and how do you see various central banks, governments coping with it?
I think what you're seeing now is that people who are in the space are standing up and trying to educate the government organizations about crypto, right? Like they have an incentive to want to build in this space, and so they don't want the ban, and so they're going out and educating the government officials. So I think that'll continue to happen, and then as that happens, assuming that the government is competent and they want to thrive and they want to create good for their country, I'm hopeful that they will be open-minded about it. And I think the things like that India meant, like I think, like, for example, India's approach more recently was that they want to allow experimentation, but they're not sure about allowing it as a currency yet. And I think, like, that's a great first step, right? Like, at least it's not an outright ban. And so they're kind of like opening themselves up rather than being scared of it. But ultimately, like, I mean, the reality is, like, something like crypto is scary because, like, when you don't understand it, like, you might think it's used for bad activities, like illegal activities. And of course, any currency is going to be used for illegal activities. So I don't really buy that argument. But reality is, I think a lot of governments are scared that it's going to threaten their own currencies. And that's just I don't like, that's just reality, though. Like, you need competing products and competing innovation, because it creates checks and balances for these countries as well. Like, what crypto really does is it does pose a competitive threat to like nation states and their own monetary policy and so forth. And we need that because they got a little bit complacent, right? And they were able to just kind of ride on just holding a bunch of power without much checks and balances. And I think what crypto really does is that it creates that checks and balances that these countries really need. And I'm hopeful that the future is sort of like some kind of healthy combination of both nation states and decentralization.
Well, not as a currency, Preethi, but do you see cryptocurrencies come in as an asset class? Because that is the kind of tag or line that a lot of experts in India also seem to be tagging or holding right now, that cryptocurrency perhaps can be held by Indians as an asset class. How do you read that one?
For something like Bitcoin, obviously it has the digital gold narrative going for it. So of course it can be treated like an asset class. Like, I really think we have to stop talking about crypto from a blanket term and look at it on a crypto by crypto basis, because they're all very different and their use cases are very different. So for something like Ethereum, right? Like, can you make an argument that that can be held, that's like it's hard, because it's more, for me, when I think about Ethereum, I think more like utility. Not now, but in the future. So I think like it will really depend on which crypto we're talking about. And I'm curious to see how governments treat different cryptocurrencies. Are they going to, put Bitcoin, for example, in one bucket and then all the other cryptos in another bucket? Or are they going to literally regulate each crypto by crypto one by one? It's unclear. And I think we really need people to start thinking about this in a more forward-thinking way, because I think like, even like what does it even mean for something to be an asset, right? I think we have to almost like redefine all of this financial lingo that we have, because crypto just doesn't fit into a lot of these things.
Well, yes, that point is well taken, Preethi, but there's so much to talk about, and we'll continue that after this very short break.
WazirX and CNBC TV 18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.